Well, good morning. Rummy and I have made it to Stalag XB, Sam Borstal. Now, it's a little bit off the beaten track. It's about, I guess, somewhere about 20 miles off of the main motorway 1, just north of Bremen. So it's a few twists and turns to get here, but this Stalag housed predominantly Royal Navy and Merchant Navy. However, it also housed an awful lot more. There was a big Russian contingent here. There was a big Polish, French, lots of different nationalities, and it was a labour camp. So we're going to have a look around and find out a little bit more about it. So this is the entrance to Stalag XB, Sam Borstal, and this is a new building. This building here, it just houses the museum itself. And then you just have a look over there. There are some of the original buildings that were put here back in 1939, 1940. Now there was somewhere in the region of about 300,000 prisoners came through this camp. Yeah, that's a lot. That is a lot. 300,000 actually came through this. And a lot of them were Russian, and a lot of them didn't survive. There's a lot of Poles as well. A lot of them didn't survive. Now, a couple of k's away is the cemeteries for them. And we're going to have a look at those later. But for the time being, let's go and have a look around the museum itself. So, welcome to Stalag XB, Sam Borstal. Now, as far as I can work out, this area down here, area 5, is where the British Royal Navy and Merchant Navy were kept. Over in number 4 there is what's left of the camp today, and that I think was the Russian compound. Now we're in this building here at the moment, and this is a new building, and this is housing the actual museum itself. Across the way, these huts are still there, and we'll have a look at those in a bit. But for now, we'll have a look around the museum itself. So when you come into the museum, this is what you see. So you've got the first bit here, the entrance, and this board gives a description of the camp. Now, like some of these, it's free to enter. So, Stalag XB Sam Borstal, the history and post-war use of the POW camp. So that's what we're going to be looking at. So that's what the camp kind of looked like back in the day. So as you go around the museum, you'll see that there's lots of boards, information in German and in English. So as you look round, it's in English as well, and you've got the translations. Now, the Russians in 1942 were brought into the war by the Germans, basically, and that's when you got a lot of Russian prisoners. And because they hadn't signed up to the Geneva Convention, they weren't treated the same as other prisoners. So, the camp from 1926 to 1939, even during World War I, POW labour had been used to cultivate the moorlands between Bremen and here. In 1926, the Prussian Construction Office planned to set up a camp of huts for 200 prisoners to the southwest of Sandborstel. These prisoners were to be used for the cultivation of the moor, I can't even pronounce it, in 1932. The voluntary Lower Saxony Labour Service Association established a labour service camp at this site. The camp was taken over by the Nazi Party Labour Services in 1933, and then by the newly founded Reich Labour Service in 1935, which housed its Department 172 at the site. This department was probably moved in early 1938, and the camp remained empty until the Wehrmacht began using it in 1939. So there you go, it's been in existence for quite a while. And it became Stalag XB, which was essentially a labour camp. It was used to house, after the Wehrmacht decided to establish a POW camp in Sandborstel, construction properly began in August 1939. The camp was designed to hold 10,000 POWs in 40 huts, arranged to the left and right of a central camp street. However, since the first Polish POWs were transferred to agricultural work, detailed shortly after their arrival, the camp's capacity was reduced in November 1939 to 7,500 prisoners, who would be housed in just 27 huts made of brick or wood. In accordance with the regulations, the camp fence was erected first. Local tradesmen started work on the camp, and POWs were used for the construction later on. Yeah, so that's good, isn't it? So what they do is they make the poor buggers. So here's some interesting facts. The Commandant's headquarters was the supreme administrative authority in the POW camp. POW camps were run by the Commandant and his staff, the adjutant, who was also his first duty, and the intelligence officer, who was additionally responsible for contact with the secret state police, the Gestapo, along with the headquarters company, which handled various administrative tasks. So there was 98 soldiers and 33 military officials and employees were assigned to manage camps like Stalag XB with 10,000 prisoners, even when the occupancy of the camps rose to an average of 30,000 prisoners in 1940. The number of staff remained the same. It was not until August 1942 that the number of administrative personnel in the POW camps was raised to a total of 341 to account for the large number of prisoners. I reckon with such small numbers of administrative staff, it would have made escape fairly easy, especially if you've got sort of 30,000 prisoners. But I guess if those prisoners were being used for forced labour, they were generally too knackered to think about escape. But even 341 administrative staff for 30,000 prisoners, it wouldn't take an awful lot for a revolt. Yeah. Unfortunately, I was talking to the lady that runs the camp now. She was saying that they don't know how many escape attempts there were because all the documentation and everything was destroyed, which is a shame. Be interesting to have an idea of how many prisoners worked on escape. Certainly there was a mix of officers and other ranks here, and the officers volunteered for work. There you go. So here's some interesting facts. The guard squads, a POW camp like Stalag XB with 10,000 prisoners, have a staff of 98 soldiers as well as 33 military officials and employees, such as paymasters, workshop foremen and administrators. In addition to this headquarters company, the camp employed guards. The San Bostel camp was guarded by territorial infantry battalions from Military District X, whose members could not serve at the front because they were too old or had been injured. One territorial infantry battalion was made up of 4 and later up to 6 companies. A single company known as the Carter Company was responsible for overseeing the work in the camp and manning the watchtowers. The remaining company guarded the POWs on work details outside the camp. So basically, you've got the headquarters element, and then you've got battalions of companies guarding the prisoners. So it doesn't state actually how many additional guards that they used, but they used them for guarding the camp and the watchtowers, and also sent them out on work details. So the normal daily routine for the territorial infantry soldier guarded the POWs in multiple shifts. They were given the authority to enforce the rules that the camp's POWs had to obey. Very few of the guards at San Bostel rejected Nazism or actively supported the POWs. Instead, many were motivated by Nazi ideology. However, the number of guards squads took advantage of their latitude to interpret the rules in different ways. There you go. So some of the goons could be bribed, some of them couldn't. So yeah, it's difficult to get a picture of what life was like in the camp here. So there were Belgian POWs, there were French, there were Poles, there were Russians, there were British and Allies. So when a POW first arrived at the camp, what happens was arrivals and registration. So the new POWs arrived at the entrance section of the camp. Their personal details were recorded and they were searched for weapons. Each prisoner was assigned a consecutive POW number, which was stamped on a metal identification tag. This was followed by a medical examination. The POWs, the prisoners, were allowed to keep their uniform, but all national insignia and badges of rank were removed. To prevent epidemics, the prisoners were disinfected and vaccinated before they entered the camp, and their clothing was disinfested. The next step was registration, when the prisoner was photographed and 2 index cards were created for their personal and financial details. Personal card 1 and 2. So I guess that's to identify them. So if they managed to escape, then they would soon be detected. So disinfections. The Wehrmacht continually tried to prevent epidemics such as louse-borne typhus. In Stalag XB, this is why POWs were disinfected immediately after their arrival in the camp. The disinfection procedures were repeated at regular intervals. The prisoners had to undress outside the disinfection and bathing hut. In the entrance section, they showered while their clothes were being disinfected with hot air, and their skin was coated with disinfectant. In the winter of 1941-42, weakened Soviet POWs would frequently collapse from exhaustion in the freezing cold outside the hut while they waited naked for their clothes to be returned to them. Hundreds of them died. Yeah, it's quite brutal. Yeah. Actually, there was total disregard for Russian prisoners at all. Surprised any of them actually survived. So I'm just going to have a quick wander around the rest of the actual exhibition and just give you a flavour of what it's like. And then what we'll do, we'll go off and have a look outside. So there's a British Tommy, Royal Artillery. So not quite sure how it worked, whether they whether British and Americans gave up their badges of rank and stuff, or it was just other nationalities like the Russians, the French, the Belgians, the Poles. Yeah, so looks like death. An unknown number of POWs died at Stalag XB. The prisoners were confronted with the death of their comrades every day in the camp, and the work details. Pulmonary tuberculosis was a frequent cause of death. It is not known how many prisoners were shot by the guards or committed suicide. Main reason for that is a lot of the documentation was burnt at the end of the war. So, yeah. So, as concentration camps go, or POW camps go, you don't hear much about this one. Not quite sure why. Maybe because it's held Russian prisoners, and they didn't want an awful lot known about what they were doing with the Russians. Had Italian prisoners here as well. So Italians came here in 1944. Oop. So winter of '44 was quite a brutal time. Italian military internees in Military District X. So prisoners managed to keep some of their own gear. Insurgents from the Warsaw Uprising of 1944. Yeah. So they brought some of those here. Surprised they actually let them survive. So this is basically the museum. And it goes on to show what happened with the work details. So we'll move on, and then we'll go and have a look outside. So it comes down both sides. So when they emptied out the Neuengamme concentration camp and its satellite camps, they brought them all here. There's some 9,000 prisoners that they brought here. So yeah, that overcrowded the camp quite considerably. And yeah, caused one or two problems. But we will go down and have a look at the cemeteries, of which there are a few here. And they're all stuck in mass graves, which wasn't a lot of fun. Lots of them unidentified. So I've now come outside and can have a look around some of the huts. I think I'll give you a bit of a flavour of what's in the museum, and this is the museum building just behind me here. So I'm now going to go down and let's get a look at some of the huts. They were being used after the war, in fact, right up until the sort of 1980s. This camp was being used. A lot of it was used for the people and children coming from the DDR, from what was East Germany. So they housed them here for a short period of time before resettling them. So yeah, I don't think I'll go in this one. This one doesn't look particularly safe. So we'll move on to the ones that are. Yeah, that's kind of overgrown and stuff. But this is how the camp was laid out. This is it. This is what it actually looks like. Now, that one we can't go in because it's locked. But she says I could go in any of the ones that's open. So the ones that's open are just a bit further along here. So if you find the time, and you're passing this way, it's worth coming in and having a look. This is a little known about concentration camp or POW camp. It was both. They used forced labour. They had guys being taken out on work details. So yeah, so this is one of the ones that's open. So we'll go in and have a look. So into the dark. Dun 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 dun. See how good the camera is. So let's have a butcher's about. So this is having a look into some of these, raised floors. Looks like, yeah, all the floors have gone in most of these. Now we're coming to sort of the bed areas. So this one we can go in, and this is what the kind of beds look like. Not sure where they had the bed boards, but yeah, they obviously said slept quite a few to these. Yeah, stay off the floorboards, I think. So this is sort of, they still use these buildings for giving lectures and stuff like that. So as you can see, the I'll just step lightly in here. The floorboards are starting to give out, and yeah. So there was a mixture of wooden and brick-built buildings that housed prisoners, and they would effectively house about 200 in each of these blocks, or yeah. So it's amazing that they've actually kept this going. Yeah, you can see that the floors aren't in a particularly good state of repair. Now, whether prisoners actually, this end of the block would be the ablutions, and there doesn't look like there's too many of them. Communal pooing. Yeah. So this, for 200 people, ain't a lot. So half a dozen sinks and half a dozen crappers for 200. You could imagine the mess in here, can't you? So we're going to have a look at this. I think there's a wooden building, not a wooden building, this is a wooden building with sort of the walls. Yeah, not sure what the walls are made of, but there's a brick built building that we can go and have a look at. Now, some of the other buildings here were built sort of in the 50s and 60s, and this whole place was used right up until the 90s to house people for different purposes. So we're just going back out into the light. Boom, we're in the light. So we're just going to have a wander over to that brick building there and see what we can see in there. Well, I'll just come over to this brick building, and it looks like this is, or was, a washroom. Pretty grim. And yeah, so I think they were also using this maybe as a kitchen. This has been one of the main kitchens for the enterprise. No, this is more crabbers. This is more ablutions. So there's a lot of pigeons have made their homes in here. Yeah. Don't know what they were keeping in here. But yeah, it looks like the floorboards are gone again. There's obviously stuff under the floorboards. Okay, so that door's been held up. So we'll go back out the other way. Oh, I'll tell you what, it's getting warm today. So here's another building we're just going to go and have a look in. This one looks a slightly better repair than some of the others. And it also forms part of, this is the post-war history of a POW camp. The British Army liberated Stalag XB at Sandbostel on the 29th of April 1945. After the liberated POWs and concentration camp prisoners had been moved to infirmaries and hospitals in the area, the British occupying authorities set up an internment camp, mostly for members of the Waffen SS, in the former POW camp. The Lower Saxony Ministry of Justice took over the complex in 1948 and turned it into a prison. And from 1952 to 1960, the Federal State Ministry for Displaced Persons used the site as an emergency transit camp for young male refugees from East Germany. From 1963, the German Federal Armed Forces used the grounds mainly as a depot. The Sandbostel Council designated the site as an industrial estate in 1974. For decades, the victims of Stalag XB were commemorated primarily at the former camp cemetery. Today, the Sandbostel War Graves Cemetery. Parts of the camp were acquired in 2005 and 2008 by the Sandbostel Camp Federation, which established the Sandbostel Camp Memorial here. So we'll go and have a butcher's of that. But first, we'll have a quick look around the post-war part. Now this is the 1945, the first monument in Sandbostel. Okay, that's that one. And the liberation of Stalag XB Sandbostel, 30th of April 1945. And there's a load of pictures there. It is worth coming and having a look at this. Most of the, I was talking to the girl, most of the people that come to this are generally school children. Parties of school children are brought here as part of their history lessons. So, yeah, this is just showing the lager at Sandbostel 4852. So lots the site has been used a lot over the years, and now part of it is used as the museum to remember those that have gone through here. During the war years, there was something like 300,000 people came through this camp. Amazing to think that many people. And it looks like children today still are taught to remember what went on here all those years ago. Now, there are lots and lots of POW camps, and I even had motorcycle rallies to Sandbostel. An association of anti-fascist motorcycle clubs known as the Keeble Wempel expressed its support for the creation of the memorial in Sandbostel, with the nationwide motorcycle rally ending with a wreath-laying ceremony at the memorial in front of the camp church, 18th of September 2004. So this is just a brief look around. I would say it's worth a visit. It really is worth a visit. For no other reason, just to see the difference in the camps. The other day I was at Stalag 3, and you saw what that was like. And I was at Dachau concentration camp, and to see what that was like, that was even worse. So this just depicts what the site looks like now from before, and it's showing what was there. This is taken from April 2013, so that's where the old camp was. And yeah, it's can't quite work out where our bit is, but I think it's down here. But there you go. What they do with an ex-prisoner of war concentration camp. So again, what they use this building for is for obviously lectures. They have parties of predominantly school children in, and give them lectures on the camp and all the rest of it that went with it, as part of their history. So there you go, that's a good look around Stalag XB Sandbostel and what you can expect to see here. I haven't shown you it all. Some of these buildings are from the 50s, so not all of them are from the time. But I think what she said is the brick buildings over there without the roofs, those were here at the time, and the camp actually extended a bit further out than where we are. So now the next thing is I'm going to bid farewell to this one and just pop down to the cemetery, or cemeteries, because I think there's 3 of them down there, and just go and pay me respects and have a look at what they've done to there. Now, some of the bodies were exhumed, I think from 54 to 56, and reinterred somewhere slightly more fitting, but there are mass graves down there. How many, they don't know. Basically, they don't know how many are here, how many bodies have been buried. What they do know is that somewhere around 300,000 people came through this camp at some stage during the war. That's a lot. So, that's it for now. Hope you've enjoyed this so far, and I'll take the other bits on at the end. And what I'll do is I'll put a link in the description to the website for the museum. So this is the sign for the Kriegsgraber Statter war cemetery, basically, and this is a look at it. So this is the entrance to it, and this is a mass grave, or several mass graves, if I'm honest. So there are a lot of Russians buried here. This is about 3 kilometres from the camp. So yeah, this is going to give you a rough idea. That's just showing Stalag XB on the 7th of April 1945. We'll just have a look around this cemetery, and there's memorials. So this gives you a brief history of it. The Sandboster War Graves Cemetery, creation and development as the camp cemetery. When Stalag Luft XB, or Stalag XB, was built in August 1939, no cemetery existed. So in the summer of 1945, the Soviet military administration in Germany arranged the building of an 8-metre high memorial at the camp cemetery. In 1960, a Polish war memorial was replaced by a high stone and 2 concrete pillars, columns on the left and the right. So, and then it tells you about the reburials in the 40s and 50s. The identified bodies from France, Belgium, Netherlands, Italy, GB and USA were moved to their home countries or to national war cemeteries. Those bodies unidentified or from Eastern Europe countries remain in the cemetery. So the cemetery as a memorial site, with the funding from the state of Lower Saxony in 1946, custody of the cemetery was transferred from the local authority to the German War Graves Commission. So there you go. And there have been several projects since then. So I'm just going to have a wander down to have a look. They don't actually know how many people are buried here. So, Soviet mass grave. Yeah, they really have no idea how many have been buried. It's kept well. It's, I guess it's on par with the War Graves Commission. So this is just part of it. This is just part of the cemetery itself. This is the mass graves of the Soviet side, and I think we'll have a walk over to the other side. It's all very peaceful here. Don't know how many are actually buried here. It needs a little bit of TLC by the looks of it. The wall's sort of fallen over. I dare say that'll get fixed fairly soon. I'll just have a walk round to this other side. It looks like they've got somebody that tends to the site. It's quite moving when you come to somewhere like this, and just to see how many people have been laid to rest here. And I guess this is coming over now to the Polish side, and we'll just have a quick look at this. So, yeah. So just to have a look back there. So this, I think, is the Polish side of this mass grave. Actually, they've identified some of the bodies. Or Flag XB. Yeah. Yeah, graves of Polish and unknown prisoners of war are buried here. You can tell it's very, very peaceful, very quiet. Apart from a cockerel crane, that's it. So there you go. That's it from me for Stalag XB and what was associated with it. I only learnt about this particular Stalag a little while ago when I was doing some research into this trip, and I thought, yeah, this is one of the places I'd like to come and visit. I'm glad I did. I'm glad I've made the effort. It's not the easiest place to get to. Coming off the motorway, it's about 30 kilometres. It's quite a lick to get here. And following a sat-nav, turns left and right all over the place. But on the whole, I think it was definitely worth it. It's if you've not been to one of these types of places, it's worth having the butchers. The Germans are now kind of accepting what their forebears have done, and I wouldn't say they were happy, but they are allowing people to learn from history, because that's what you can do. You can only learn from history. You can't change it. And I think that's one of the key lessons to take away from this riding through history. You can't change it, you can learn from it. And let's hope that we don't get into this sort of mess ever again. So for now, Rummy and I, we're off to, we're off. I think our next stop is Overloon in Holland to the Resistance Museum. So until then, TTFN. Ta-ra for now.